Welcome back to Goofy Harry. Today's adventure: what if Harry Potter inherited Kronos' scythe instead of the Elder Wand? If you haven't already, go ahead and smash that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss a story. Now let's begin. Chapter 1. The room that answered too well the castle was screaming. Harry had heard screams before, real screams, the kind that climbed out of a throat and refused to come back down. He had heard Hermione scream in the cellar of Malfoy Manor. He had heard his own voice at 17 make sounds he did not recognize. But the castle was different. The castle screamed through its stones, through the flagging in the corridors, through the suits of armor that were, improbably, fighting. Hogwarts had found a vocabulary for its own dismemberment, and the vocabulary was awful. He ran. Ron and Hermione were behind him, their footfalls double-timed to his because he had stopped caring about breath. The seventh-floor corridor had lost 2 of its portraits to blasting curses. The fat lady, somewhere far off, was bellowing rallying cries to students she could no longer see. Harry turned past the tapestry of Barnabas the Barmy and began to pace. "I need the place where the lost things go," he muttered. "I need the place where all the lost things are. I need to find the one he lost." The door rose out of the wall like something that had been holding its breath. "Wands up," Hermione said, which was the only thing she ever said anymore, and the 3 of them stepped inside. Harry had been here before. He had stashed a school book here once and come back later to find it ready for him. He had hidden inside when Umbridge had been pacing the corridors looking for blood. But now the room of hidden things was a cathedral of forgetting, stacked to the vaults with every object that Hogwarts had ever half remembered. Broken wardrobes, shattered mirrors, half-finished potion kits from 1912, a stuffed crocodile wearing a Gryffindor tie, tomes chained to nothing, a suit of cavalry armor missing 1 leg. The air smelled of dust and ancient flower waiter. Somewhere deep inside, Harry could feel a pull in the center of his sternum, the kind of pull that had always meant he was close to something Tom Riddle wanted. "Split," he said. "We find it faster apart." "I hate that plan," Ron said, already splitting. Hermione gave him a look that could have pickled a snake, and then she was gone too, down a slot between 2 vanishing cabinets that weren't quite vanishing enough to be safe. Harry ran. The bust with the stone tiara, he remembered it with the clarity of a man who had once tried very hard not to notice something. He wove past an upended writing desk, past a broken time-turner whose sand had all gone to dust, past a cabinet full of wigs. He climbed a mountain of trunks and felt his knee protest. He saw the tiara, the dull, battered diadem, resting where he had left it on the bust, and his heart made a terrible, relieved sound. And then the room went red. "Well, well, Potter." Harry did not have to look. He knew the voice. He knew the sneer on top of it. "Malfoy," he said, "out of my way." "Not a chance," said Draco, but his voice was thin, and Harry heard the thinness. Behind Draco were Crabbe and Goyle, fat-jawed and stupid-eyed, wearing the robes of the inquisitorial squad like they were still auditioning for Umbridge's lap. Crabbe had his wand up. Goyle had his wand up. Draco's wand was up too, but not steady. "Potter's in here with the Mudblood and the Weasley," Crabbe said. "Dark Lord wants the Mudblood alive. Not the others, just the Mudblood. The rest we can," Crabbe, Draco hissed. "Shut up, Malfoy," Crabbe said, with the sudden confidence of a boy who has never before had permission to tell Draco Malfoy to shut up. "I don't take orders from you no more. You're the one wanted that wand back. I'm the one's gonna get it." And then Crabbe, with the bright casual wickedness of a man using a gift he had not earned, said a word Harry had only ever read in a footnote, and the world became fire. It was not a charm. It was not even a hex. It was Fiendfyre, and it remembered nothing of the room. Flames bloomed out of Crabbe's wand in the shape of a chimera and began, immediately, to eat. Harry dove. The diadem on the bust cracked as a burning ox horn took the top off of it. He scooped it up as he rolled, the cold metal biting his palm, and Hermione's voice was somewhere close, but the room was changing shape by the second. A stack of broomsticks went up like pine needles. A tower of ancient homework lists caught at once, the fire climbing so fast that it made a sucking noise, pulling the air out of the room to fuel itself. "Harry," Hermione, somewhere in the heat. "This way," Ron, farther hoarse. "I've got the diadem," Harry shouted. Get out, I'll find you," and then the stacks collapsed on him. He went down hard, his wand out of his hand on impact, the diadem somehow still in his fist. A cabinet fell across his shoulders. His ribs made a sound he disliked. He spat smoke and tried to get his arm free, and the fire licked toward him without hurry, the chimera's face turning his way with something that was not quite intelligence and was worse. He was going to die in the room of lost things, under a cabinet, holding a broken crown, and he found he was almost embarrassed. "Lumos," he whispered reflexively, even though his wand was gone. Something answered him. It was not his wand. His wand was somewhere else. The answer was further in the wreckage, further down, something under a rotted bolt of silk that had once been cloth of gold. A thin, cold line of light just at the edge of his vision, almost lilac. He couldn't have seen it, it was behind him. He saw it anyway, the way you see a star in the corner of your eye that isn't there when you turn your head. He reached for it. His fingers closed on a haft, cold, smoother than horn, longer than his forearm. He pulled, and the haft pulled back, and then the cabinet on his shoulders lifted off him as if a polite stranger had moved it. He rolled out from under it with the weapon in his fist. It was a scythe, not a reaper's pantomime, not the cartoon sickle of a Halloween mask. This was a farmer's tool elongated into a killing shape, the blade a long smooth curve of something that was not steel, something that looked, in the firelight, black and blue and faintly wet. The haft was the color of storm cloud, wrapped at the grip in a binding of tendon or root. Harry could not tell, and studded at both ends with small ridged discs of bone. Along the haft ran a line of letters in no alphabet he had ever seen. They warmed against his palm. A voice came, not into his ears but into the space between his ears, soft as falling snow. "There you are." Harry had dreamed voices before, Voldemort's whispering, Bellatrix's cackling, his own 12 years old saying "You're a wizard, Harry," like a lie he had been told and was now telling back. This voice was none of those. It sounded the way a cold riverbed looks in August, smooth and ancient and waiting. He did not answer it. He stood. The Fiendfyre leaned toward him and stopped. The chimera's face, made of devouring fire, turned its snout toward the scythe and recoiled. The flames parted around Harry as he walked. They parted the way a crowd parts when a body is carried through it, with reluctance and awe. Harry did not walk through a burning room. The room made a corridor for him. He found Ron first. Ron was on top of the overturned wardrobe, hauling Hermione up beside him, both of them coughing, neither of them injured in any way that mattered. When Ron saw the scythe in Harry's hand, he did not speak, which was a rare event and a sign of how badly the day had gone. "We're getting out," Harry said. His voice sounded ordinary. His hand on the haft felt ordinary. The two things did not match up to what was happening inside his chest. "Harry," Hermione managed. "What is, later, move." They moved. The path the scythe made was not long, but it was clean. Harry walked through a corridor of fire the way a reader walks through a sentence. The sentence had to let him. At the wall where he had once seen a vanishing cabinet, he hesitated, and then, because he could hear someone sobbing, he turned. Draco Malfoy was curled on top of a plinth that used to hold an armillary sphere, hugging his knees, eyes white and huge in the firelight. Crabbe was not visible. Goyle was not visible. Harry did not want to guess. "Come on," Harry said. "No," Draco said without conviction. "Malfoy, come on." He reached, not with his free hand, but with the scythe. He turned it very carefully, so the curve of the blade was away from Draco, and he extended the haft. Draco stared at the weapon like it was a snake, then at Harry like Harry was a snake handler, And then finally, because he was a coward, which was not always a bad thing, he grabbed the haft. Harry pulled him off the plinth. "Hold on," Harry said. "What? Hold on." The corridor of unburning air widened in front of him. The Fiendfyre, already deep in its own feast, paid no more attention to them than a dog pays to a gnat. Harry walked out of the room of hidden things with Ron on one side, Hermione on the other, Draco Malfoy in his wake, and the Scythe of Kronos humming in his fist like a harp someone was remembering how to play. The corridor outside was cool, comparatively. The corridor outside was also on fire in some places, but a different, manageable kind of fire, the kind you could put out with aguamenti if you had a minute. They shut the door. The room of requirement, sensing perhaps that it had done all it could, let the door vanish. Hermione stared at Harry. Harry stared at the scythe. Ron stared at the door. Draco was on his knees in the corridor, throwing up. "Harry," Hermione said again. There was a particular register Hermione's voice took when the world had done something unauthorized. It was in that register now. "Harry, what is that?" Harry held the haft. He did not know. He thought he did, in the way that a baby knows its mother's name is the thing it has been hearing, but he had no word, only a shape in the dark. The voice came again, soft as before. "Master of Death," it said, "is too small a title." "Did you hear that?" Harry asked. "Hear what?" "Nothing." "Harry," Ron said very carefully, "what are you holding?" Harry looked down. The diadem was still in his left fist, buckled. He held it up. "Ravenclaws." "Cracked, but we can still, Fiendfyre. It's supposed to destroy Horcruxes. It ate crabs, I mean." "Not that," Ron said. "The other thing." Harry looked at the scythe. In the corridor light it looked less wet, more like iron cooled in oil. The letters along the haft were dim now. They had been bright when he was afraid. "I don't know," he said. Hermione reached very carefully and did not touch it. She seemed to change her mind an inch away. Her hand hovered, then retreated. "It's warm," she said. "I noticed." "Number it's you don't feel it." "I feel it," Harry said. "I meant I noticed you noticing." From far down the corridor came the unmistakable sound of a giant falling down a staircase. The castle had not stopped screaming. It had, if anything, begun to scream in harmonies. "We need Snape's memories," Harry said. We need to find." A thud closer. A boy's body thrown against stone, a girl's voice shrieking a killing curse that didn't land. The war was eating through the 7th floor corridor in their direction. "Later," Ron said. "Inventory later. Move now." They moved. Harry slung the scythe along his back, across the chest strap of his robes, the way he had once seen a woodcutter in the Highlands carry an axe. The blade did not cut through his robes. The haft did not swing when he ran. The scythe moved with him the way a well-trained broom moved, knowing what its rider was about to do. They crossed over a fallen Hufflepuff boy Harry did not recognize. Hermione knelt. The boy was breathing. She cast a shield over him so that he would not be trampled, and they went on. They ran past Neville, who was throwing Devil's Snare at a Death Eater and doing so, somehow, cheerfully. They ran past Professor Flitwick dueling 2 masked men at once and winning, because Flitwick had been a dueling champion in the decades before any of this ever began. At the top of the marble staircase, Harry stopped. Down below in the entrance hall, something was going wrong in the big, slow, specific way of endings. The Death Eaters were pulling back. A retreat. Harry had seen retreats in his father's memories, in Snape's memories, in the newsreels Vernon had watched with his mouth full of bacon. He had never seen one in progress. Voldemort was calling his people back. And Harry knew with the simple clarity of someone watching a clock tick over noon that Voldemort was about to issue his ultimatum. The 1 hour, the forest, the body. He turned to Ron and Hermione. "He's going to call a truce," he said. 1 hour. "How do you know?" said Hermione. "I know." "Harry, I know." The voice polite. "I could tell you what he will say if you like. I could tell you before he says it." Harry did not ask. He thought very carefully into the haft under his hand. "Not yet. Please, not yet." The voice, amused, pleased, how charming. Draco had been following them, white-faced, still wiping his mouth with his sleeve. He spoke for the first time since the room. "Potter, that thing, what is it?" Harry looked at him. Draco had not mocked it. He had called it thing with the particular respect one gives to an animal that might still bite. "I don't know yet," Harry said. "You should put it down," Draco said. "I don't think I can." Draco looked at the scythe. Draco looked at Harry's hand on the scythe. Draco looked at Harry's face. Something settled behind Draco's eyes that had not been there before. It was not friendship. It was not even mercy. It was the look of a boy who had finally seen, up close, the difference between a curse and a consequence. "No," Draco said. "I don't think you can either." From somewhere below, deep in the entrance hall, a voice began to speak, and every stone in the castle leaned to hear. It was a voice that had once been a boy named Tom Riddle, a voice that had spent decades learning how to be heard through walls. "You have fought," the voice said, valiantly. Harry did not listen. He already knew what it would say. He walked instead to the window at the top of the staircase, the one that looked out over the grounds to the forbidden forest, and he stood there in the fire-lit dark with the Scythe of Kronos across his shoulders. In the glass he saw himself, a boy of 17 with a broken diadem in one fist and an ancient blade in the other, and behind him a taller, thinner reflection, his own and not his own, wearing the scythe like a crown. The runes on the haft glowed once, very briefly. "There you are," said the voice. "You are very late." Harry said nothing. He did not lower the scythe. He did not raise it. He held it the way a man holds a sleeping child whose parent is in the next room, knowing that the child is not his but that the child, for now, has decided. In the window, his reflection put its head on one side and considered him, and for the first time since Godric's Hollow, since that night when he was the boy in the cot, Harry Potter felt, clearly and coldly, that he was not actually going to die. He felt instead that he was going to finish this. Down below, the truce was being called. Harry watched his own eyes in the dark glass. Then he turned and started down the stairs, because he had a war to end and a scythe to carry and still quite a lot to think about. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2. What the scythe knew the hour's grace turned Hogwarts into a field hospital. Madame Pomfrey had taken the Great Hall, because the Great Hall was the largest room, and because the long tables, once cleared, made serviceable pallets. The house banners were down. The enchanted ceiling showed a sky that had forgotten to perform weather. It hung gray and uncommitted over the wounded. Harry walked past the doors of the hall and did not go in. The scythe along his back was, for the moment, quiet, and he wanted very much to keep it that way. He led Ron and Hermione, and trailing, unwanted and unresisted, Draco Malfoy, up a corridor he knew the way some men know the streets of their neighborhood, by the cracks in the flagstones. A disused classroom off the 4th floor had, in the years of the inquisitorial squad, served as Umbridge's overflow detention. It had lost its door to a stray curse. Harry conjured one. Hermione reinforced it. Ron stood against it with his wand out while Harry laid the scythe across the teacher's desk. "Right," said Hermione. Now what?" said Ron. "Now we analyze it." "Hermione, we have an hour, Ronald, and a weapon that has been talking to him. We are not going downstairs with it until we know at least one and ideally 3 things about it, starting with what it is." "Starting," said a voice from the corner, "with whether it is actually a scythe." They turned. Luna Lovegood was sitting on a desk at the back of the room with her feet tucked up underneath her, and no one, not Harry, not Ron, not Hermione, had heard her come in. "Luna," said Ron. "Hello," said Luna. "The door said I could come in. It was being very welcoming." "I conjured that door 90 seconds ago," said Harry. "I know," said Luna. "That's what it told me." Harry did not have the energy to argue with any part of that sentence. Hermione, who ordinarily would have, glanced at the scythe and decided the usual priorities could wait. "You followed us," Hermione said. I heard, said Luna, slipping down from her desk and walking slowly, deliberately in the way one approaches a stag at a river, a sound I have never heard before, in my head, like a bell rung underwater. Is that the scythe? Probably, said Harry. Can I touch it? No, said Hermione. Yes, said Harry. He did not know why he said it. The scythe had not suggested it, but Harry had learned over the course of 7 years that when Luna asked a strange question, it was almost always the right question to ask, and when a strange person reached for a strange object, it was sometimes safer to let the stranger do it than to stop her. Luna touched the haft. Her fingertips, thin as reeds, rested on the storm-gray wood between two of the bone rings. She shut her eyes. Nothing happened. Or Hermione thought nothing happened. Ron thought nothing happened. Harry, who was listening for a voice that did not always bother speaking aloud, heard the scythe say something that sounded almost like "oh." "Drepenin of the deep hour," Luna said, eyes still closed. "Forged before the Greeks had Greek, dipped in Tartarus, bound in Gaia's tendon, handed down to," her eyes opened, "to Kronos, the Scythe of Kronos, Harry." The silence that followed was the best and worst kind. It was the silence of having the thing named. You're joking," said Ron. "I never joke," said Luna, which was not true, but they all accepted it. Hermione had gone completely still the way she went still when a difficult arithmancy problem rearranged itself in front of her. Then she went to her bag, Hermione's bag of holding, the one that had become, by this point in the year, a sort of character in its own right, and began pulling out books. "Greek," she muttered. "Greek, Greek." 3 volumes landed on the desk in a small stack. She grabbed the top one, opened it, and flipped so fast the pages were a blur. "Wait, Luna, how do you know this? Why do you know this?" "My father has been writing about it for years," said Luna. "You would not believe how often the quibbler gets things more right than the prophet." "I would," said Ron with feeling. Harry was still looking at the scythe. Luna's hand had left it. The haft looked exactly the same. In the center of his chest, behind his sternum, something like a door that had been ajar for hours quietly closed. "Hello," he thought, into it. "Hello," said the scythe back. "She is a priestess of no particular god. I like her." Harry cleared his throat. It's awake now, more awake." "It talks to you," said Hermione. "Since the room, yes." "What has it said?" Harry rubbed his face with his free hand. "It said Master of Death was too small a title. It said I was very late." He paused. "It offered, I think, to do something about," he gestured, "about the bit of him in my head." Nobody had to ask what he meant. Ron and Hermione had seen the dreams. Ron and Hermione had watched, this last year, Harry's scar send him into shapes that were not Harry's shapes. Draco, who had been sitting against the far wall with his arms around his knees pretending not to exist, actually lifted his head at this. "The bit of him in your head," said Draco. "You mean?" "Yes," said Harry. "Potter," said Draco. "He put a piece of himself in you." "Yes, Malfoy." "Merlin's teeth," said Draco, and put his head back down on his knees. "Harry," said Hermione very carefully, "before we do anything with that, we're doing it," Harry said. "Before, we're doing it, Hermione." "Harry, that thing is pre-Greek, and not one of the books I have is going to tell me what happens when." "Hermione," said Ron, which was rare, because Ron did not normally interrupt Hermione when she was in full flow. "Look at him." Hermione looked. Harry had not realized he was shaking. His teeth were clenched. The scar on his forehead, which had been, for the last year, a dull, consistent ache, had begun to prickle in the way it prickled when Voldemort was feeling something complicated. Voldemort, somewhere out there in the forest, was feeling triumphant and patient, and there was a thin thread of something else, also, underneath the triumph. He was afraid. Not of Harry. Of something Harry had touched. "He knows something happened," Harry said. "He doesn't know what yet. We don't have long." Hermione, against everything in her training and nature, nodded. "Tell me what to do," she said. The scythe, and Harry had by now accepted that the scythe was, for lack of a better verb, participating, seemed to unfold a set of instructions in his head the way a hand unfolds a map. He saw the shape of what was needed before he had words for it. He spoke the words aloud as they came. "I need to lie down," he said. "On the desk. Cold iron at my head, a ward, Hermione, to keep him from seeing. Ron, you hold the diadem." "Not yet, when I tell you." "Diadem?" said Hermione. "What?" Harry pulled the broken diadem out of his bag. He had been carrying it, folded in a torn robe, since the room. The stones that decorated it were cracked. A thin black ooze had been weeping out of one of the settings ever since the fire. "It's a Horcrux," he said. "Well, it was. Fiendfyre almost finished it. The Scythe can finish it." "The Scythe will finish both of them at once," said Luna, dreamy and cert. "Both," said Hermione. "The one in the diadem and the one in him," said Luna. "They are the same kind of knot. You untie one, the other comes loose." "Is that true?" Ron said to Harry. Harry felt the scythe hum, a low, affirmative vibration. "Yes," he said. Hermione, without further debate, began to ward. She had grown in the last year into a witch who could cast silent protective charms at the rate a Muggle typist types. She wove 3 concentric rings around the desk. The inner in runes Harry did not know, the middle in Old Latin he half did, the outer in something she was making up as she went. Ron produced from his own bag an actual cold iron nail because Ron had, for reasons Harry was not going to ask about in the next 5 minutes, been carrying a cold iron nail. He laid it above the desk where Harry's head would go. Luna arranged Ron's hair, apparently because it needed arranging. Harry climbed up onto the desk and lay back. The wood was hard, the scythe across his chest was warm. "Ron," he said, "ready. When I tell you, put the diadem on the blade." "On the blade, on the blade. Like you're hanging it up." "Got it." Harry closed his eyes. The scythe spoke into him, softer than before. "This will hurt," it said. "I will be fast." "Thank you," Harry thought. "You are welcome," he thought quite clearly. "Do it." Ron placed the diadem on the blade. It slid down the curve like a hoop on a hook. It trembled there. The black ooze began to run faster down the setting, to drip, then to flee, pulled downward along the edge toward Harry's chest. Harry had been, at moments in his life, in what he would later describe as pain. The basilisk in the chamber had been pain. The cruciatus under Bellatrix's wand had been pain. The hour after the graveyard had been pain in the way a long cold rain is pain, drawn out, devaluing. This was not that. This was extraction. This was a splinter the size of a year being drawn very quickly out of muscle. This was the cold, deep shiver a man feels when he has been lying for a long time, and then told for the first time the truth. It climbed up his spine. It entered his skull. It touched the scar, and the scar, for the first time since he was 15 months old, stopped hurting. The diadem on the blade split, quietly as a biscuit splits. The ooze of it ran down the blade. The scythe drank. Harry felt a second thing leave him, smaller, hotter, furious. It was a ribbon of black smoke, pulled out through his scar as if by a delicate hand. It writhed on the blade. The scythe took its time this time. Harry had the impression of something very old and very patient picking teeth out of a fish. The ribbon thinned. The ribbon went quiet. The ribbon was unmade. The scar on Harry's forehead in the same moment faded. Not gone, still visible if one looked. But the thin, cracked lightning of it that had bent into his skin for 16 years now lay on his forehead the way a childhood scraped knee lies on an adult's knee, a mark, not a wound. He opened his eyes. The classroom ceiling had a water stain shaped like Ireland. He had never noticed. He noticed now. "Harry," said Hermione. "Harry, your scar, it's fine," Harry said. "I'm fine." He sat up. He felt in the center of his head the particular emptiness of a room you have moved out of. He had expected grief. He had expected, maybe, to feel less. Instead, he felt more. He felt for the first time in a long time that the entire inside of his head belonged to him. He got down off the desk. He picked up the scythe. The blade was clean. Somewhere out in the Forbidden Forest, Lord Voldemort had sat up very straight. Harry felt it. Not as pain, not through the connection that had linked them. That connection was gone now, quietly packed up and taken away, but in the reflected emotion of the room, the way a child at a dinner table knows when an adult has been insulted across from him. Voldemort had been counting on something, and the thing he had been counting on had, quietly, evaporated. "He knows," Harry said. "Know what?" said Ron. "He knows something happened, not what." "We should move," said Hermione. "Yes," said Harry. He slung the scythe across his shoulders again. The runes along the haft were dim. The voice in his head was quiet, but it was the quiet of a friend sitting nearby with a book, not the quiet of an empty room. He found to his mild surprise that he did not want the voice to go away. "You," he thought, "are going to be a problem." "I know," said the scythe. "You are welcome." They were halfway down the corridor when Harry stopped. "Snape," he said. "What?" "Snape, his memories. He came to me in the shrieking shack. He gave me." "Harry," said Hermione, "you've been on a desk." "I know. You were unconscious for I am not sure how long, minutes." "I know." Hermione looked at him for a moment. Then she said in a tone that was almost gentle, "All right, the shack." They went. They went by the tunnel under the whooping willow because the grounds were, in places, still on fire. The tunnel smelled as it had always smelled, of damp earth and old rat. At the other end, the shack was quiet. Snape lay on the floor where Voldemort had left him, and even now he wore his disgust about himself like a second cloak. The memories were not in the file Harry had remembered. Snape had produced something slightly different, a thin silver thread of recall, dragged from eye and ear and mouth, caught and held in a conjured flask that he had not lived to cap. Harry bent, capped it, took it. They went up to the castle, to the headmaster's office. Harry spoke the password. Acid pops no longer worked. The gargoyle, in the absence of a headmaster, had decided to accept anyone who carried a Hogwarts student's wand and a friend, and they climbed. The pensive was where it had always been. Harry poured. Harry dove. He came back up an hour of Snape's life later, which was 8 minutes of his own. When he surfaced, he was not weeping. He did not know why he had thought he would be. He was, instead, very still, and Hermione was saying his name in the soft voice she used when she had to interrupt him in a library. "I was meant to die," Harry said, out loud to the room. "Harry, I was a Horcrux, me. I was one of them. He didn't know it, but he put a piece of himself in me, and that piece had to die with me. Dumbledore knew. He knew, and he set me up to." "Harry," said Luna softly from the doorway, "but you are not one anymore." Harry breathed. "No," he said, "I am not." He looked at the scythe in his hand. It was quiet. It was also somehow attentive. "Did you know," he said to it out loud, not caring that Draco was staring, "when you pulled him out of me, that this was the plan? That I was meant to die out there?" "Yes," said the scythe into the room so that everyone heard. Everyone flinched. "I did not care," it added. "I still do not care. You will not die tonight because I do not wish it. I find I prefer this arrangement." "You prefer," Harry said slowly, "this arrangement. I have been held by many hands. I have been held by none in several thousand years. I do not intend to correct that by having you walk into a forest and lie down." Ron exhaled, long and shaky, and said very quietly, "Bloody hell." The portrait of Albus Dumbledore behind the headmaster's desk shifted. The portrait's eyes opened. The portrait had not appeared to be there a moment ago. Harry did not trust this and did not intend to start now, but he listened. "Harry," said Dumbledore, "my boy." "Don't," said Harry. Dumbledore paused. His painted face rearranged its expression. "I have a great deal to explain," he said. "I bet," said Harry. "I did not know I should have trusted. I assumed, because I could see no other way, that there was no other way. That was my error." Harry looked at him. Then he turned away to the scythe on the desk. "What is the price?" he asked it. The scythe took, for the first time that evening, some time to answer. "All power is borrowed," it said. "I am, as you have realized, not magic as you know it. I am older than that." "What does using you cost?" "Every use pulls at the old places. Small cuts are small pulls. Great cuts make the old places move in their sleep." The thing that is chained in Tartarus heard the first cut I made in your hand in a way it has not heard anything for 1,000 years. It will hear louder cuts more loudly. It will, if I am used to unmake Tom Riddle, wake. Wake how? Not all the way, not tonight. Enough to be known, enough for the patient ones to find you. Patient ones. There are always patient ones. They wait on creatures like me. Some of them wait on you. The portrait of Dumbledore cleared its throat. Harry, said Dumbledore, the Scythe is being honest. It is also being selective. Please. I'm not asking you, said Harry. He did not look away from the blade. I'm asking it. The portrait, after a moment, went back to being a painting of itself. All right, Harry said to the Scythe. I hear you. Small cuts where I can, but Voldemort, him you must reap entirely, said the Scythe, or he will come back a third time, and there will not be the third time a mother to die for you. Harry nodded. He felt in a cold, clean way that he had been handed at last a straight line to walk down. All right, he said. He turned to his friends. Ron, Hermione, Luna. Draco, somewhere behind them, not one of them but no longer something else. Ginny was not here. Ginny was in the hall helping Madame Pomfrey. He would find her. 1 hour is about up, Harry said. He'll be coming for his answer. Let's give him one. They went down the spiral staircase together. At the bottom, Harry paused. Luna, he said, the things it said about patient ones. Do you do your father's columns? I will send him an owl tonight, said Luna brightly, as if Harry had asked her for a biscuit recipe. He will be pleased. He has been waiting a long time to be taken seriously. Taken seriously about what? Titans, Harry. Harry looked at her for a long moment. Right, he said, Titans. The castle was still screaming, but only in places. The rest of the castle was holding its breath. Harry Potter walked down through Hogwarts with the Scythe of Kronos on his back, a broken diadem in pieces in a bag, a wand in his hand, and a friend on each side of him. And for the first time in his life he could remember, he was not walking toward his death. He was walking toward someone else's. Chapter 2, End Chapter 3. The reaping of Tom Riddle. Voldemort had placed himself, with a stage manager's instinct for sightlines, on the stump of the yew in the courtyard outside the great hall, and his Death Eaters were arranged around him in a loose crescent the way courtiers are arranged around a king. Bellatrix stood at his right, blood dried on her chin from a bite she had taken out of someone. Lucius Malfoy stood at his left, trying not to look for his son in the broken windows above them. The rest, Rookwood, Dolohov, a dozen nameless others, held the courtyard's corners. It was exactly dawn. The eastern sky behind the burning west wing of the castle had begun to gray, in a way that promised a clear day later, a day nobody in the courtyard expected to see. Voldemort's gaze moved across the empty archway of the entrance hall. The hall was crowded, behind. The survivors were pressed against the inside of the doors, the way one presses against a window to watch a storm. He did not look at them. He looked past them, expecting a body to come through. In his hand, the Elder Wand, the wand that had lain in Albus Dumbledore's dead fist for almost a year, sat oddly, a guest in a house that had not yet decided to welcome him. Where, he said in a conversational voice that carried, is my offering? Nothing. From the depths of the hall came coughs, sobs, the wet intake of breath of people learning to breathe around fear. I had thought, Voldemort said, Harry Potter would be a man of his word, or at least a boy of his word. I see I was mistaken. Very well, I suppose I shall have to. I'm here. The voice was not quite Harry's. It was Harry's, certainly, the same register, the same northern softness over the London vowels, but it came from a place in the chest that the last year had hollowed out and refurnished. It came out of the entrance hall, clear and unhurried. It came from a boy wearing the invisibility cloak on his shoulders like a coat, not over him like a shroud, because he was not trying to hide. Voldemort's wand, the knobbled pale length of elder that had been, for a matter of months, the worst-kept secret in Europe, was already half raised. He was trying to be seen. Harry Potter walked out of the great hall. His hair was a mess. His glasses were scratched. His robes were singed at one shoulder. He carried a wand in his right hand and a blade that was not a sword across his back. The blade caught the dawn and did not shine. It absorbed light and seemed, to the onlookers, to be wearing dawn as a thin skin. Voldemort saw. Voldemort, who was, for all his other lacks, not a fool, saw in one glance every detail that mattered. He saw the scar on Harry's forehead, which had faded. He saw the scythe on Harry's back, which had not existed in any of his accountings of the world. He saw in the boy's face a stillness that had not been there even 8 hours ago. Voldemort knew, in the way predators know, that his plan for the morning was going to require revision. "Potter," he said. "Tom." Voldemort's eyes, red slits in a white face, narrowed for an instant at the name. Harry saw the instant and did not press it. He stepped further out of the hall. Behind him, at the edge of his vision, Ron and Hermione were holding back a number of people: McGonagall, Kingsley, Ginny, Neville, Slughorn, who wanted very much to be in front. Harry had asked them privately not to be. The courtyard had room for 2. It had never had room for more. "You have brought something," Voldemort said. "Yes." "May I see?" "You are seeing." "I would see it closer." Harry smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. It did not look like any smile he had worn before, and Ron, watching from behind, would later say it was the moment he first understood that Harry had, in the last 12 hours, become a man. "Closer is a matter of when," Harry said, "not whether." Voldemort tilted his head. "Bellatrix," he said, "kill the witnesses." Bellatrix moved fast. Bellatrix had, for the decade of her life outside Azkaban, been the fastest reflex in a room. She had been faster than her husband, faster than her sister, faster than the Aurors who hunted her. Her wand came up. Her mouth opened to shape the green word. She did not finish it. Harry had not moved his own wand. He had not, in any sense he would later be able to articulate, moved at all. The scythe had moved. He had thought a thing, and the scythe had agreed, and a thin vertical line of displaced air had crossed the courtyard at the speed of a rumor. Bellatrix Lestrange, still shaping her killing word, folded along that line into 2 pieces, top to bottom, the way a sheet folds. She had just barely time to look surprised. She did not have time to scream. The 2 halves of her fell apart to either side of the U. There was no blood. The blade had, in passing, cauterized. Voldemort looked at her for a long, long moment. Then he looked at Harry, and then, for the first time in any living memory, Lord Voldemort stepped back. "She was one of my best," he said. "She was the worst person I have ever met," said Harry. And yet, Voldemort smiled, a thin conversational smile, and Harry, who had spent too much of his life watching that smile, saw fear underneath it for the first time. "I see," said Voldemort, "that you have acquired an artifact." "Yes." "May I inquire?" Voldemort paused. It cost him. It visibly cost him. His Death Eaters, behind and around him, could feel it cost him. Some of them, very quietly, began to edge back from their positions. "Rookwood," Voldemort said without turning. "The reports." "Master," said Rookwood from somewhere behind the crescent. The reports from the older correspondence. What did they tell me about the western vaults?" "Master, the correspondence, they have not replied for some days." "Why?" I do not know, Master." "You do not know?" Rookwood was silent. "I will remember," Voldemort said softly, "that you do not know." He looked back at Harry. His red eyes were, for a tiny split instant, very careful. "Very well, Potter, I see the shape of the hour." He raised his wand. "Let us then end it." "Yes," said Harry. "Let's." Nagini, until now coiled invisibly around the yew stump, struck first. Nagini had always struck first, because Nagini was old and Nagini was loyal, and Nagini was the last piece of Tom Riddle's soul outside the man himself. She came at Harry's throat out of the dawn shadow, a flash of diamond scales. Harry moved the scythe. It was one stroke, level, almost lazy. The head of Nagini flew apart from the body of Nagini somewhere 3 feet above the courtyard stone. The two pieces fell. On the wind that the scythe stroke made, an oily green light rose out of what had been Nagini and struggled briefly for shape. The scythe sighed, and the light came into the blade, and the blade drank. 6. Harry had been counting his whole adult life without meaning to. 6, he said quietly to himself. Voldemort had not had time to react to Nagini's death. Voldemort's face for a heartbeat became a human face, and the human face had grief in it, a specific and private grief, and then the face went back to being the face Harry knew. Voldemort moved. He was fast. He was, even now, one of the 3 or 4 fastest duelists alive, and he brought his wand up in the flat lethal arc that meant Avada Kedavra, and he spoke the word in the voice that had, in Harry's infancy, been the last thing Harry's mother ever heard. The green light came down the courtyard toward Harry. Harry did not move his feet. He moved the scythe. The blade crossed the green light at an angle, the way a reed crosses a current, and the green light, which was a curse and more than a curse, and had not, in living wizarding memory, been intercepted by anything smaller than a human body, split along the blade and broke against the courtyard's flagstones to either side of Harry, where it scorched 2 crescent marks and died. The courtyard made a sound that was not quite a gasp. It was the collective exhalation of several hundred people who had, until that moment, believed that the killing curse was the last word on any conversation. Voldemort's mouth opened. It closed. It opened again. Interesting, he said. Harry said nothing. He stepped forward 1 step, and the Death Eaters on the left of the crescent abruptly remembered that they had, in fact, other places to be. 2 of them disapparated. A third, Rookwood, hesitated, looked at the stump, looked at Harry, looked at the stump again, and chose the stump. Crucio, Rookwood said. The scythe parried. The pain curse struck the blade and rang off the blade in a sound like a tin cup hit with a ladle. Rookwood did not have time to cast again. Hermione, who had stayed behind Harry on the understanding that she would keep her hands out of it, had, it turned out, understood no such thing, struck Rookwood from the doorway with a Petrificus Totalis that was so quietly, so surgically cast, that nobody in the courtyard saw where it came from until Rookwood was already on the ground. The remaining Death Eaters began, with a variety of expressions ranging from panic to calculation to outright despair, to disapparate. Voldemort, for a few precious seconds, did not notice. He was looking at Harry. His wand was down. His wand was back up. He was speaking. How, he said. How did you, your serpent, Harry said. What? That was 6. Voldemort, who had kept the number of his Horcruxes a private accounting for nearly 50 years, went briefly bone still. You do not know what 6, Harry said, and you make 7, and there is nothing else, Tom. I have looked. The elder wand in Voldemort's hand, the one that had been taken from Gregorovitch, stolen from Grindelwald, lifted out of Dumbledore's tomb, trembled. Voldemort did not seem to notice. His eyes were elsewhere. Harry, who no longer had a direct channel into them, could still guess. Voldemort was reviewing, at the speed of panic, every hiding place he had ever chosen, and finding that, impossibly, Harry had found them all. You have friends, Voldemort said at last softly, as if this were a damning accusation. Yes, it was the friends. Among other things, the ring, the locket, the cup, the diadem, his lip twisted, the snake, all of them. And he did not say it, the 6th, he could not. That one, Harry said, I gave back. Voldemort stared at him. The scythe, Harry said, took it out of my head. For the first time in the courtyard, Voldemort looked, not at Harry, but at the scythe. He looked the way a priest of a small religion looks when a larger and older god has, without warning, walked into his temple. His mouth, which had formed so many murders into sound, moved once silently around a word. No, he said almost to himself. Yes, said Harry. That is, yes. The correspondence I know, said Harry. I know about the correspondence. You didn't know about them. You thought you were at the top of a hill. You were halfway up somebody else's mountain. Voldemort and Harry would remember this moment for years, laughed. It was not a pleasant laugh, but it was a real one. Tom Riddle, boy from a London orphanage who had been taught to believe that he was the rarest creature in any room he entered, had just learned at 68 years old that he had been, as Harry had put it, halfway up somebody else's mountain. "You ridiculous boy," Voldemort said. "You have no idea what you've picked up." "No," Harry said. "I don't, but I know what it's going to do next." He walked forward. Voldemort raised the wand. Voldemort spoke the curse again. The blade caught it and the blade folded it, and Voldemort, in a moment of genuine, unplanned calculation, disapparated. He did not go. The air in the courtyard would not accept him. The scythe had, without Harry's conscious intent, shut the courtyard, the way one shuts a kitchen door against a draft. Voldemort's body, which had been halfway into shadow and space, was jerked back into the morning, and he arrived again in the courtyard stumbling, almost comically, as if he had tripped on a threshold. Panic in his face for the first time Harry could remember. "You," he said, "you cannot, this is not I," he mastered himself. "Potter, listen. There is more in the world than you understand. The thing you carry, put it down. Put it down and we will, yes, we will negotiate, Tom. I have spoken to powers, Potter, old powers, I have arrangements. I know. You and I together, Tom, could make of this world, Tom, stop." Voldemort stopped. He stood heaving in the courtyard of Hogwarts in the body he had built for himself out of his father's bone and a servant's flesh and Harry's blood, and his red eyes were wide and his mouth was open, and he was, Harry saw clearly, already dead because he had started to argue. Harry raised the scythe. "You killed my mother," he said. I don't want to hear it. "Potter, you made me an orphan. You made Neville's mother insane. You made Teddy Lupin an orphan before he could sit up. You killed Fred Weasley in the hallway of the castle 2 hours ago. You, listen, killed too many people, Tom. I am not a philosopher, I am not a judge. I am a boy with a thing that can kill you all the way, so." He brought the scythe down. The scythe did not cut him. The scythe, and this, Harry would only understand later, reached past the body, past the fragment of a soul that Voldemort had made for himself out of spite and fear, past the man-shaped thing Tom Riddle had bargained himself into being, and it reaped, specifically, the spirit. It was one long, slow, indrawn breath on the part of the blade. The Elder Wand fell out of Voldemort's hand and skittered across the courtyard stones. Voldemort's face, for one absolutely clear instant, was a boy's face, a dark-haired, unremarkable 11-year-old from an orphanage who had been told for the first time that he was a wizard and had smiled, and the smile for that instant had been normal. Then the face was gone. The body fell. The scythe was quiet. Harry stood in the courtyard, the scythe across his shoulder, the Elder Wand lying at his feet. Around him, by ones and twos, the Death Eaters who had not managed to disapparate in time were already being cornered by teachers and parents and children with wands. Rookwood, paralyzed at the edge of the yew stump, was being sat on by Neville Longbottom, who looked in the dawn light, as if he had decided to stop being afraid of anything, ever again. Minerva McGonagall came out of the Great Hall. Minerva McGonagall, who had in the last hour lost, by Harry's count, 18 of her students, came across the flagstones with her wand down and her face the color of bread. Kingsley Shacklebolt came a pace behind her, calm, practical, his own wand already back at his hip. McGonagall looked at Voldemort's body. She looked at Harry. Then, to Harry's intense embarrassment, she knelt. "Get up," Harry said at once. "Professor, please get up." McGonagall did not get up for several seconds. When she did, her eyes were wet, but her face had arranged itself back into its ordinary shape. "Mr. Potter," she said. "Thank you." "Please don't," Harry said. He nudged the Elder Wand at his feet with the side of his boot. "That's yours, Kingsley, for the ministry. Lock it somewhere deep and don't tell me which drawer." Kingsley bent, wrapped a square of cloth around the wand without touching it with bare skin, and tucked it into his robes. He straightened and looked at Harry the way a practical man looks at a new fact. He nodded at the scythe other thing. "I'll hold on to that," Harry said. Kingsley considered. Kingsley had been an Auror for a long time, and an Auror developed a sense for when a fight he did not want to have was being offered to him. He nodded. "Understood," he said. "For now." Harry turned. Ron was there, Hermione was there. Ginny came through the doors of the Great Hall slowly, carefully, without hurrying. Ginny had been told by Hermione not to rush him, and she stopped a yard away. "Harry," she said. "Hi. Are you?" He looked at her. He had not looked at her properly in some weeks. He realized he had been through some stupid idea of protection, avoiding it. He looked at her now. He found he was shaking. "Jin," he said. "Hi." She crossed the last yard and she kissed him very briefly on the mouth, and then she put her forehead against his forehead carefully on the side without the scar, and she said, "You're staying." "I'm staying." "Good." She stepped back. She looked at the scythe. She looked at him. "What's that?" she said. "Long story." "I bet." Harry laughed. It surprised him. He had not expected to be able to laugh in this courtyard for a very long time. That night, in a bed not his own, in a room where Ron was asleep on the floor and Hermione was asleep in a chair, Harry lay with the scythe along the wall beside him and listened to the castle, quiet for the first time in weeks, and felt something new. "Who next?" said the scythe. "Nobody next," he thought. "I beg to differ," said the scythe. "Who next?" He did not answer. He set the scythe on the floor under the bed. He could still hear it. He fell asleep anyway because he was 17 and he was finally tired, and the last thing he thought before sleep was not the dead face of Tom Riddle, but the living face of Ginny Weasley, her forehead on his. In the morning, on the windowsill, an unfamiliar owl was waiting. It carried a cream envelope addressed to Mr. H. Potter in a hand so elegant it looked printed. The sender's name was not there. The wax seal was a curve of blade in profile. Harry looked at the seal. The scythe beside the bed hummed once softly in recognition. "Hello," said the scythe. "There they are." Chapter 3 and Chapter 4. The unspeakable men. The cream envelope sat on the windowsill for 40 minutes before anyone opened it. This was not because Harry was afraid of it. Harry was, he realized, past a certain kind of afraid. The envelope sat because Ron was in the shower, and Harry had decided, firmly and without explanation, that he would not read any new piece of writing about himself without Ron in the room to say something sarcastic about it. When Ron came in, dripping, wrapping himself in a dressing gown that was 3 sizes too big because it had originally belonged to Charlie, Harry picked up the envelope and held it up. "Oh good," said Ron. "A mystery letter, my favorite way to start a morning. Who died now?" "Nobody." "Optimist." Harry opened it. The paper inside was heavy, creamy, cut down to a square smaller than the envelope. The hand was the same elegant script as the address. The text was brief. "Mr. Potter, permit me to introduce myself only at length. I know a great deal about you, and I expect you have now, in the last 12 hours, learned a great deal I did not anticipate you learning. I should like to meet. I believe you have questions whose answers you will not find in any book accessible to Miss Granger, however tireless she has been. I propose a tea house in Ludlow at noon on Saturday. I will come alone. You may bring whomever you like. I would be especially glad to see Miss Lovegood, whose father I have admired for years. I have had my eye on your blade. I do not want it. I want its wielder to understand what he carries. Yours in patience, A.L., said Ron. Yeah. Anyone we know. Alistair Moody's dead. Albus Longbottom, also dead and also not a person I've ever met. Antonin, no, that's Dolohov, wrong letters. Potter, this is suspicious. I know. Noted for the record. Hermione came in with her hair wet and an apple in her teeth. She read the letter. She sat down on the bed. She read the letter again. Black ink, she said, but oak gall, iron nib. This paper is Cotswold, not ministry. The wax, she turned the envelope over, is French. The seal is a scythe. Thanks, Hermione, Ron said. And the initials, Hermione said. A.L. we said. Alethea. Harry and Ron both looked at her. Hermione did not look up. She was staring at the seal. Alethea Lestrange, she said. I read about her. In an appendix about the pure-blood families. She's Rabastan and Rodolphus's cousin. Half French, she was never a Death Eater. Never a Death Eater, Ron said, almost incredulous. Lestrange. She was quoted once in an old interview as saying Voldemort was. Hermione looked up at Harry, insufficient. She said that about him, in print. Nobody in the family would be seen with her. She lives alone in Shropshire with 3 house elves and a great many books, and she has never been publicly seen at any wizarding function since 1977. Since 1977, Ron said. What, she just vanished? She stopped being interested. In what? In any of this. Hermione gestured at a world that did not, in her gesture, include anything Harry had ever called wizarding. She stopped being interested in wizarding society. Doesn't mean she stopped being interested in other things. Harry looked at the letter. He read it again. He read it a 3rd time. She isn't mocking me, he said. That's the strange part. She sounds patient. She sounds, said Hermione, like she has been waiting a very long time. The scythe on the windowsill beside the envelope warmed in agreement. She has, it said. She wrote the first draft of that letter 40 years ago. By noon, Harry had slept 6 more hours and had been told by Madame Pomfrey that if he did not present himself at the Great Hall for a checkup, she would personally drag him there by an earlobe. He presented. He was poked, prodded, rebandaged, and released with the grudging permission of a witch who had been patching up Potters since before he was born. He walked out into the entrance hall and found that the entrance hall had been repopulated by men in gray. Unspeakables moved quietly. They always had. Harry had always assumed, as a schoolboy, that unspeakables were a rumor. Then, after the Department of Mysteries, he had understood them as a threat. Today they had come out of their rumor and into the castle, and they had brought with them a man Harry had heard of but never met. Mr. Potter, said the man. He was slight, perhaps 60, his robes a shade of dove. Algernon Croker, head of the Department of Mysteries, I am glad to find you whole. Mr. Croker, may I speak with you briefly? You may speak. I am not sure I can promise briefly. Croker smiled. It was a small, delicate smile, and it did not go further than the edges of his mouth. Perhaps the headmistress's study, he said. I should like a door between what I say and what the rest of the castle hears. Harry glanced at Ron. Ron was, as always, already there. Hermione was already there. Luna had materialized improbably from a staircase. Ginny, who had not been in the entrance hall 12 seconds ago, was now at Harry's elbow. All right, Harry said. Us, though, as you prefer. They went up. McGonagall, who had been installed the previous evening as acting headmistress on the simple grounds that nobody else would do it, let them in and then left. It was the kind of generosity that was also a statement. McGonagall did not trust unspeakables, but she trusted Harry. The office smelled of lemon and old books and, faintly, of Phoenix. Fawkes had returned sometime in the night and was perched on his stand, looking disapprovingly at the furniture. The portrait of Dumbledore was looking pointedly away from the conversation, which Harry found intensely suspicious. Mr. Potter, said Croker, without sitting, I will come to it. You are carrying an object which my department has been watching through indirect means for approximately 800 years. I am concerned with it. I would like it, with your permission, to be secured in the death chamber in a warded case that we have prepared for it since 1692, which— No, Harry said. Croker had, it seemed, expected this. Mr. Potter, you do not understand what I am learning, Mr. Croker. Tell me something I don't know and I'll consider you. He looked at the old man. Go on, surprise me. Croker paused. Croker thought. Harry saw him calculate the marginal utility of candor against the marginal cost. Candor won by a whisker. "It is called, in our internal documents, Object 9, said Croker. "We have ever only had one object with a single-digit number. The case we have prepared for it was designed by Elric Bones in 1691 and has not been opened since. Every unspeakable in modern times has sworn an oath to return the object to that case if they ever find it in the wild. I am not here because I want power, Mr. Potter. I am here because we have records of," he hesitated, "previous bearers." "How many previous bearers?" "7, in recorded history that we are sure of." "What happened to them?" Croker looked at him. "Mr. Potter, Mr. Croker." Croker exhaled precisely. "7 bearers," he said. "Of the 7, 4 killed themselves inside of 2 years. 2 were killed by the Scythe's attention by, shall we say, entities with an interest in it. 1, and here Croker did something very strange. He smiled, and the smile went further up his face than the first one had. 1 of them laid it down and walked into a monastery. He lived to 73. He was, among our records, the only success." "A monastery?" "The Carthusians. In Spain, in Cornwall as it happens, a Celtic house, long gone," Harry thought. "Mr. Croker," he said, "how did he lay it down?" "We do not know. You have records." "We have records that say he laid it down and walked away. The records are not interested in how, they are interested in the outcome. The records, Mr. Potter, are not mine. I inherited them." "Can I read them?" Croker considered. "Some of them," he said, "under supervision." "Whose?" "Mine. That is acceptable." Croker's eyebrow lifted by the smallest of fractions. "You are taking this better than your father would have," he said, not quite to himself. "You knew my father. I knew your mother." "Slightly. She interned with us one summer. She was promising." The scythe against Harry's back hummed. Harry did not register the hum as a warning exactly, but he registered it. Scythe liked Croker. The scythe did not like a great many people today. That was interesting. "Mr. Croker," Harry said, "you said you have been watching the object through indirect means." "Indirect how?" Croker's face, for the first time, looked tired. "There has been," he said, "a cult." "I thought so." "You did." "A woman has written me a letter." Croker went very still. "What name?" he said. "She did not sign her full name. Initials only, A.L. Lestrain. That's what Miss Granger thinks." Croker sat down. He sat down on the edge of McGonagall's desk, because there was no other chair near him that was at a suitable height, and he put his face in his hands. Harry had seen Madame Pomfrey do this. Harry had seen once Mr. Weasley do this. He had never imagined an unspeakable might. "Mr. Potter," said Croker without looking up, "my department has been hunting this woman for 11 years. I have lost 3 officers to her. I have lost 2 more to what she is allied with, which is not strictly the same thing. I have not known her address. I have not known her face. I have known her handwriting." He looked up. His eyes were pale and exhausted. "If you will permit me, may I see the letter?" Harry handed it to him. Croker read. Croker read it twice. Croker folded it, very carefully, back into its envelope and handed it back. Did not keep it. Harry respected him for the first time for that small mercy. "I would ask you," Croker said, "not to go." "I'm going." "Mr. Potter, Mr. Croker, I am going, with friends, armed. I want to see her face. I want her to see mine. I expect you will be in the tea-house at a nearby table pretending to read a paper, and that is fine by me." Croker looked at him. He did not agree exactly. He also did not argue. "She will not be there," he said at last. "She will send someone. She will watch. She has never in a decade entered a public room as herself. You will not catch her this way." "All right. All right. All right. We will still go. If it's her messenger, we want to talk to them anyway." Croker nodded. He rose. He made to go. At the door he turned. "Mr. Potter," he said, "one thing, if you are offered a cup of tea, do not drink it, whatever pretext." "Noted." "If you are offered a handshake, do not take it." "Noted." "If you are offered," Mr. Croker, "noted in general." Croker's small smile returned. "As I said," he said, "better than your father." He left. The corridor outside the headmistress's office was quiet. Harry stood for a moment with his hand on the gargoyle's head. Ron, Hermione, Ginny, Luna waited. "He's frightened," Hermione said. "I saw." "Harry, if an unspeakable is frightened, I know. And he knew your mother, seemingly. I'll look into it later." Hermione, Harry turned. "I need you to find out everything you can about Alethea Lestrange by tomorrow morning. Ron, I need you to find out whether there is a tea house in Ludlow that actually exists, and if so, which one she means. There can't be many. Luna, your father, now, Owl, full sheet. Tell him to send everything he has about Titan cults in England since the Romans." "Yes," said Luna. "He will be pleased." "Don't tell him why. He will ask. Tell him it is because Mr. Potter has asked and it is urgent and he may publish in a year's time." "He will like that," said Luna. "Very much." "Harry," said Ginny. "Yeah." "What am I doing?" He looked at her. Ginny Weasley in the morning light, her hair a roaring mess, a bruise on her jaw where someone had caught her with a fist. Ginny, who had been through the Chamber of Secrets at 11 years old, through the Ministry at 14, through a year of the Carrows at 16. Ginny, who had refused for 2 weeks last autumn to acknowledge Harry's existence because he had tried to break up with her for her own good, and had shown him in the bluntest possible terms that this was not a decision he was allowed to make alone. "You," Harry said, "are coming with me, Saturday." "Thank you. You don't have to thank me." "I'm going to. You're welcome," Ron snorted. Hermione looked at them both, and her face did something complicated and fond. Luna smiled at the ceiling for reasons best known to her. The dream started that night. Harry had dreamed of Voldemort on and off for 6 years. Since the scar had faded, the dreams had stopped, so Harry had thought, like a fool, that dreams were done with him. The first dream came just before dawn. It had the simple, precise quality of information being handed across a counter. He stood in a field. The field was somewhere in Greece. He knew this, although he had never been to Greece, and it was very old. The grass was long. The sun was not in the sky. Chained to the earth in the middle of the field was something enormous. A giant, perhaps. Harry could not see all of it at once. It had golden skin and golden eyes, and the iron on its wrists was as wide as a door. The chains went down into the ground and did not stop. The giant looked at Harry and spoke, not with its voice, but with something underneath its voice. "Boy," it said, "you have my scythe." Harry did not answer. "I do not want it back. Not directly. I could not hold it now even if I wished. I want to see it. I want to see it up close. Bring it close. That is all." "No," said Harry. "There is a door," the giant said, "in a hill in your country. At this door there is a key. The key is small. The turn is short. It is such a small thing, boy. You will find if you come to it that you may turn it with one finger. One finger and you will be as no wizard before you has ever been free." "No," said Harry again. The giant's eyes did not move. "When you are tired," it said, "I will be here. I am patient." Harry woke. Ron was asleep on the floor with his mouth open. Hermione was asleep in the chair with a book open on her chest. Outside the window the sky was pink. The scythe under the bed was very quiet. Harry reached down and touched its haft. "Was that you?" he thought. "No," said the scythe. "That was my other keeper. He is old. He is bored. He is beginning to try. Keep him out. I can keep his hands out. I cannot keep his voice out. Voices walk through walls. How do I keep his voice out? Hear it and tell it number often. It grows less polite every time you do." Harry lay back. He stared at the pink sky. He thought at length about fields in Greece and doors in hills and men who called themselves unspeakables and women who had waited 40 years to write a letter. He thought about Ginny's forehead against his forehead. He slept again, shallowly, until Ron rolled over on the floor and said, into the carpet, "What time is it, and is there tea?" Harry laughed. He had learned in these last few days that laughter came easier than he had once thought. "It's early," he said. "I'll make tea." Friday arrived. Luna had been at the Quibbler offices for 2 days and had returned with a trunk full of annotated back issues, some of which had been published and more of which had not. Xenophilius had, it turned out, been maintaining a private parallel manuscript of suppressed articles on the working title "The Old Gods Came Back Before We Noticed." He had submitted it 3 times to academic presses. It had been rejected 3 times on grounds ranging from insufficient primary sources to "the author is clearly not well." Xenophilius had taken the rejections badly. He had also, as Luna gently noted, taken them as confirmation. Hermione had gone through the manuscript in one long wakeful night and emerged at breakfast, looking as if she had been hit by a bus. "He's right," she said. Ron, Harry, he's right." "Luna's dad," said Ron. "Luna's dad. About everything. About most things. I don't know yet about the crumple-horned Snorkack, but about the Titans, yes. There have been incidents. There have been very carefully buried incidents. There is a corpus. It is consistent. And Harry, yeah. Alethea Lestrange is in it. Under a different name, but you can tell. By the 20s she was already what she is now, just younger." "What does she want?" Harry said. "If she doesn't want the scythe." "She wants," said Hermione slowly as if she were testing the sentence, "to make sure that when Kronos comes back he finds Britain prepared. Not to resist him, to welcome him. Welcome him. She wants to be his secretary, Harry, not his rival. Not his vessel either." Xenophilius has intercepts. "Don't ask how, make that clear. She sees him as a principal. She is his secretary, and she thinks the secretary outlives the principal. And I think, actually, she is sort of right about that, in a way that makes me want to throw up." Ron made a face. "I hate this," he said. "I hate this so much, and I want to note for the record that the old Dark Lord we just killed was, in retrospect, refreshingly straightforward." "Noted," said Harry. Saturday came. The scythe was quiet through breakfast. It had been since the dream politer. The voice of the golden giant had not come again, but Harry felt something in the corner of his head the way a man feels a tiny spider walking on the rim of his ear, not a threat for the moment, but aware. He left the castle with Ron, Hermione, Luna, Ginny. He left Dumbledore's, that is, Kingsley's, elder wand at the ministry. He left the scythe across his back in plain sight because he wanted Alethea to know, from the moment he stepped into the tea-house, exactly what was in her shop. On the road to Ludlow he felt quite calm. He thought once about his mother interning with the unspeakables. He thought once about his father. He thought again about the door in the hill. He told the door politely to go away. It did for now. Chapter 4 and Chapter 5. Alethea's Temple. The tea-house in Ludlow was on a corner down a cobbled side street, and its sign was painted in what looked at first glance like very old-fashioned lettering, and at second glance like letters from an alphabet that had, historically speaking, never quite made it into common use. Hermione, outside, squinted. "That's Linear A," she said. "Nope," said Ron. "That is Linear A, Ronald." "Nope." "I can read Linear A." "You cannot read Linear A, Hermione. No one can read Linear A. It is famously not readable." "She taught herself," said Harry. "Over Easter." "Oh, she did." Ron made a sound like a man giving up on a long argument about which he had, historically, been wrong. Harry put his hand on the door and stopped. The scythe against his back had, for the first time since they left Hogwarts, made the small humming noise that meant pay attention. "It is not a trap for you," the scythe said privately. "It is a trap, but not for you." "Then for who?" "For the one who has been promised to me next. Stop being cryptic. Stop being 17. Harry stepped inside. The tea-house was small and had 5 tables. 3 were occupied. An old man reading a paper, a young mother with a baby in a sling, and at the far table by the window 2 people who were, very evidently, Death Eaters drinking Earl Grey in a calm and patient manner. Neither of them was Alethea Lestrange. The one on the left was a woman of about 50, with iron-gray hair pinned up in a bun, round silver spectacles, and an expression of scholarly amusement. The one on the right was a man in his late 30s in a dark muggle suit, with a dark, careful beard, and one hand constantly on his teacup, not because he wanted tea, but because he wanted his hand to be visible at all times on something that was not a wand. Harry approached. Ron and Ginny followed. Hermione and Luna came last, Luna strangely confident, Hermione the tense quiet that she did whenever someone was armed. "Mr. Potter," said the woman pleasantly, rising, "I am so glad, may I?" "You may. My name is Theodora Murray. I am a classicist. I lecture or did lecture at a Muggle college in Durham. This is Corvin Yaxley," said the man without rising. "Yes, of those Yaxleys, but my branch, as it were, diverged some time ago. I am no longer with the department." "Which department?" said Hermione. "Mysteries." Hermione's face did a very small thing. Harry saw it. "You were an unspeakable," Harry said. "I was. And now?" Corvin Yaxley made a small gesture that was somehow both disarming and academic, a gesture Harry had last seen from Slughorn. "I resigned," he said, "to pursue other interests." "That is a polite way of saying what exactly?" said Ginny. "Exactly that," said Corvin. He smiled at her. His smile did not reach his eyes. "Miss Weasley, I presume." "Mrs. Weasley is my mother. Forgive me, Ginny." "Miss Weasley will do." Harry sat. Ron sat beside him. The tea-house's proprietor, a small, tired witch with a mole on her chin, was a woman Harry had, in retrospect, never seen move. She had been behind her counter when they came in, and she had not come out from it since, and this was, to Harry's mind, the least suspicious thing in the room. "My principal," said Theodora, "regrets that she could not be here in person. She is fond of your company already, having met you on paper. She felt, however, that a face-to-face first meeting would be, in the circumstances, overstated. Circumstances being, you are carrying her as she likes to think of it. I am sure you understand." "I understand that you think of the Scythe as a person," said Harry, "and you think of that person as female. That is interesting to me." "We like to be gentle with her," said Theodora. "She has been for a very long time misgendered by men." Ron made a small sound like somebody who did not know whether to laugh. Miss Dr. Murray," said Harry. "Theodora." "Theodora." "Why am I here? Because my principal wishes to make you an offer." "An offer? Yes. Then make it." Theodora smiled. She took a neat sip of tea, the kind of sip that is performative rather than thirst-quenching. She set her cup down. "We believe," she said, "that you misunderstand the Scythe. I do not blame you. You have had it how long? A week? Less. Nobody learns a language in a week." "What language?" "Her." "Go on." "The Scythe wants to be used, not as you have used her. Not for simple butchery, not even, forgive me, against Riddle, whom we considered a grotesque interim figure, but as she was designed. As an instrument of order. There are, in the world, things that ought to be cut. People who ought not to continue. Events that ought not to have happened. She can unhappen an event, Mr. Potter. Did you know that? Number she can. I don't believe you. You are entitled to your disbelief. I am entitled to my experience." She leaned forward. "Mr. Potter, we are about to propose to you a partnership. My principal is a scholar. She is a scholar of a god. She understands that god in ways no mortal has in 6,000 years. She is not, as Mr. Croker would tell you, a cultist. She is a curator. She does not wish to summon her god. She wishes to wake him carefully under controlled conditions, in an environment where his first act, and it will be an act, may be guided. You see the distinction?" "I see the word," said Harry, "between the two positions you just described. I am not sure it is a very wide word." Theodora's smile turned, for an instant, genuinely amused. She liked, Harry saw, being talked to. She did not have many people to talk to. "You are clever," she said, "more clever than I was warned. Very well. Let me put it plainly. When Kronos wakes, and he will prefer the existence of a competent mortal wielder of his old weapon. That competent mortal can be the first voice he hears, the first steward he acknowledges. Without a wielder he will waken a rage, and he will not know us from one another, and he will unmake half of Europe in his first afternoon. With a wielder, he can be reasoned with, guided, offered a partnership. Alethea has spent her life preparing that offer. She would like you as the mortal face of it. The mortal face, yes, of a god, yes, returning, yes, to an earth that does not want him. That, said Theodora gently, is a matter of what earth we are discussing. Mine, yours, yes, she made a sad little gesture. Mr. Potter, I have watched your world for 30 years. I am technically a muggle as far as anyone has ever been bothered to check. I have watched your wars. I have watched your compromises. I have watched a man with a shaved-egg head and a jumped-up following nearly conquer you twice within a lifetime. I do not think the earth you live on is one that gets to vote on this. I think the earth you live on is a child in a room where the adults are about to come home. And you are the adult. I am a teacher. You are, said Harry, a woman in a tea-house threatening me elegantly with the end of the world. I am, yes, said Theodora, and she was not offended. I am also making you an offer that will not be made again. The offer being, meet her, tonight we will take you to her, you, your friends. All of you, come see what she has built, come see. If at the end you wish to leave, you will leave. No curse, no compulsion, no blood oath. We are past that style of thing. We are, she said with a tiny rueful tilt of her head, intellectuals. Luna, who had been silent the entire meeting, spoke for the first time. Dr. Murray, she said, what did you teach? Theodora looked at her. Early Greek religion, she said. Undergraduate, doctoral students when I had them. I had two. One of them stopped speaking to me after I wrote a paper she found distasteful. About what we do when a god returns and we have the choice to resist or to interpret. And you chose. I chose, Theodora said simply, to interpret. Luna nodded, as if this had confirmed something she had already suspected. Harry, under the table, felt Ginny's hand find his knee. He looked briefly at Ron. Ron gave him the nod that meant your call, but I'm here. He looked briefly at Hermione. Hermione gave him the nod that meant dangerous but will never get closer. He looked briefly at Luna. Luna was looking dreamily at a point in the middle distance, and she said without turning, yes, Harry, go. Harry turned back to Theodora. He set his hands on the table. He did not smile. All right, he said. Take us to her. The temple was, as Hermione had predicted, under a sheep farm. The farm was in Wales, in a hollow between two hills, and the sheep were real sheep. And the farmer, a thin man in his 40s named Iffin, had been, for all of Iffin's life, a member of the cult of Kronos without ever calling it that. His grandfather had been. His great-grandfather had been. When Theodora Murray and Corvin Yaxley stepped out of the air beside his fence, Iffin raised one hand in a greeting that had, somewhere in its ancestry, been a salute. He let them into a shed. The shed inside contained a staircase. The staircase went down a long way. At the bottom of the staircase, the air became cooler and, in an odd way that Harry could feel but not precisely name, older. The corridor at the bottom was lined with flagstones older than England. Torches burned in brackets without smoking. The air smelled of granite and the faintly medical scent of a hospital corridor cleaned by people who were serious about cleanliness. They walked for perhaps 20 minutes. At the end of the corridor was a door. The door was bronze. The door had no visible hinges. Corvin put a hand on it and the door opened. The temple inside was the size of the inside of Hogwarts' Great Hall, and it had no ceiling Harry could see. It had a floor of black stone in a 12-pointed pattern. It had, in the center of the pattern, a crystal. The crystal was the size of a man. It hung above the floor by no visible means. Inside it was, Harry understood without anyone telling him, a fragment of the consciousness of a god. The fragment was not awake. It was not asleep either. It was what a person is when they are in the middle of deciding whether or not to wake. Around the edge of the temple at intervals stood 9 figures in dark robes. They were not, Harry saw, uniformly wizards. Two of them were. One was a woman with the particular upright posture of a witch who had once worked for the department. One was a man who wore, under his robe, the collar of a Muggle priest. One was, impossibly, a goblin. The rest Harry could not read. At the far end of the temple, standing calmly on the floor beside the crystal, was Alethea Lestrange. Alethea was not what Harry had expected. Harry had, without meaning to, expected Bellatrix. Dark hair, cruel cheekbones, a mouth that curled for its own entertainment. Alethea was 60, perhaps, and slim, and her hair was white, cut short and neat, not pinned. She wore a dark green dress in a style that was 10 years out of date in a way that suggested she had worn dresses in this style for 30 years and did not see why she should stop. She wore glasses. She had kind eyes. She was the most terrifying person Harry had ever been in a room with. "Mr. Potter," she said. "Welcome." Her voice was soft and educated. She had a very faint French lilt of the kind one gets from 40 years of reading in a second language and speaking it less. "I am so glad you came. Please, Miss Granger, Miss Weasley, Mr. Weasley, Miss Lovegood, all of you welcome. Would you like tea?" "No," said Harry. "No," said Ron, Hermione, Ginny. "Yes," said Luna. Everyone looked at Luna. Luna smiled serenely. "I want to see how it is brewed," she said. "Iffen," said Alethea, without taking her eyes off Harry, "will you brew Miss Lovegood a pot, please, upstairs, perhaps? Miss Lovegood, you may join him if you would like." "I would not," said Luna, "like." "As you wish." Alethea moved forward one step, no further. She was a clever woman. She did not approach a boy with a scythe. She allowed her offer to come across the floor. "Mr. Potter," she said, "I will not repeat Theodora's presentation. I trust it was adequate." "It was." "Then I will make you my offer in a sentence." She drew a breath. "Work with me, and between us, we will welcome the most powerful god this world has known since the old days, and we will have, for the rest of our lives, a seat at a table you cannot currently imagine. Refuse, and he will wake anyway, and he will not know your name, and I will still be at that table, but you will not be." "Thank you," Harry said. "Thank you for hearing me out. Thank you for being this honest. It makes this easier." Alethea's head tilted. "Makes what easier, Mr. Potter?" "Leaving." She did not smile exactly. Her face, for a breath, had the expression of a teacher whose student has not done the assigned reading but has come up with an independent argument that the teacher will now have to dismantle. "Mr. Potter, before you leave, I must ask you, you have not asked me anything. That is surprising. Most 17-year-olds would have questions. Are you certain you do not?" Harry thought. "One," he said. "Did you know my mother?" Alethea's face did a very particular thing. It was the thing faces do when somebody asks an unexpected question that lands accurately on a scar. "No," she said. "I did not. I regretted it. Lily Evans, by reputation, was one of the 6 or 7 most interesting witches of her generation. I had intended to write her a letter in 1981. I did not." A pause. "The Potters," she said, "were friends of mine, Euphemia and Fleamont, your grandmother, your grandfather. I lived with them for a summer once. Euphemia was kind. Fleamont was patient. They let me use their library. I never repaid them. I should have." "Why are you telling me this?" Harry said, though he had already guessed the answer. "Because," said Alethea, "I am, in a way which will surprise you, not insincere in my affection for you. I have watched the line of your house for 50 years. I have expected for most of those 50 years that you would die. When I realized 2 nights ago that you would not, that you had instead come into possession of her, I understood that finally I would have the conversation I had intended to have with your mother." Harry nodded once. "That's kind," he said. "Sort of." "It is sincere," she said. "All right." He took one step back toward the door. Alethea's hand quite slowly lifted. Harry saw the motion. He was ready. The scythe was ready. Everyone was ready. But the hand was not a curse. It was an invitation. "Mr. Potter," she said, "stay, even just for an hour. Watch her, watch him. Let me show you what I have learned." "No," said Harry, "I have decided." "You have not. I have decided to decide quickly. That is a virtue I have been learning. I am going now." Alethea looked at him. For the first time since they had come into the temple, Harry saw in her face, under the kindness, the long, cold, patient thing underneath. She had waited, as the Scythe had said, 40 years. She was not, however kindly she had made her face, going to wait 40 more. "Corvin," she said softly, not looking away from Harry. Corvin, behind her, moved. He moved faster than Harry had expected, and he moved toward the crystal, not toward them. He had something in his hand, an obsidian shard, black as wet tar. He had had it the whole time, Harry realized, in a sheath along his leg under his suit. "Corvin," Alethea began. Corvin plunged the shard into the crystal. The room did not move. The room stopped. For a second that Harry, who had been living with the Scythe for some days, understood was not, technically, a second. Nothing happened. The crystal held, Corvin held, Alethea held, everyone held. Then the crystal cracked. A crack thin as a hair ran up the crystal's side, another crossed it, a third. The crystal held its shape but let out of it in long, slow exhalations a smoke that was not smoke. The smoke shaped the air around it. The smoke spoke, not in sound, but in the same way the giant in Harry's dream had spoken. "I hear you." Alethea, who had been turning, turned faster. Her wand came up. She pointed it at Corvin. Corvin, who had been carrying the shard, was already carrying something else. Another shard, smaller, which he clenched in his other hand. He used it as a portkey. The air around him folded. He was looking at Alethea when he went, and he was smiling, and it was the warmest smile that Harry had seen from him all day. "Forgive me, Alethea," he said. "You were never going to share." He was gone. The crystal exhaled again. The fragment inside twisted. Alethea stared at the empty space where Corvin had been standing for the length of time it took Harry to count to 3. Then Alethea Lestrange, who had waited 40 years to be careful, who had studied Greek for 50 years, who had renounced her family, who had written a book nobody would ever read on the correct way to welcome a god, Alethea Lestrange began to laugh. It was not a mad laugh. That was the awful part. It was an intellectual's laugh, the laugh of a brilliant woman who has just been told, crisply, that the problem she has been working on for 4 decades has, by somebody else, been solved by ignoring it. "Oh," she said. "Oh, Corvin, I had not. Oh, I should have seen that. Congratulations, my boy, congratulations." The 9 figures around the temple's edge began to scream. Not all of them, 3. 3 of them, the 3 without robes Harry had read, screamed in a manner that suggested they had not been, in any meaningful sense, human for some time. They began to come away from the walls. "Harry," said Hermione very calmly, "run." "Not without her," Harry said. Alethea looked at him. She had stopped laughing. Her face, for a fraction of a second, was the face of the woman who had lived, alone in a house in Shropshire with her 3 house elves and her books, and had waited and had been for most of those years patient and kind. "You came for me," she said, as if this surprised her. "I came," Harry said, "because I wanted to see whether you were worth saving. And you stopped for a second just now. That's worth saving. Come on." She smiled sadly. She shook her head. "Mr. Potter," she said, "I have been trying to open this door for 40 years. I will not now step through it. If I stay, I stand at least a chance of slowing him. If I go with you, I am wasted." She raised her wand. "Go, take the child, take the blade, go." Harry hesitated. Alethea, who had never in her life cast a stunner at anybody, cast a stunner. It hit Luna in the shoulder. Luna, surprised, crumpled. "Hey," said Ron, outraged. "I am buying you time, Mr. Weasley," said Alethea. "Take her and go, now." The 3 once human figures along the wall had fully detached. They moved like puppets being operated by a puppeteer who had never seen a human walk. They came toward the party. The scythe on Harry's back came into his hand. He did not remember drawing it. He turned. "Ron," he said, "take Luna." Hermione covered Ginny. "With you," said Ginny, and he did not argue. They fell back along the line they had come. The three puppets came on. Harry cut. He did not use the scythe's depth, he used only its edge. Each puppet parted around the blade, legs in one place, torso in another, not a drop of blood on the black floor. The scythe did not drink, these were not souls. Alethea, behind them, was casting spells at the crystal, not at her attackers, trying, Harry saw, not to close the crack but to slow the thing that was coming through it. She had, Harry understood in that moment, never quite wanted her god to arrive. She had wanted to be ready for his arrival. She had wanted, maybe, only to be the kind of woman who was ready. At the door, Harry turned once more. Alethea was bent over the crystal. Her white hair had come loose from the neat line at her neck. Her wand was producing a braid of something silver that was flowing carefully into the crack. "Thank you," she called without looking up, "for asking. It has been a long time since a young person asked me a civil question." "Come with us," Harry said one more time. "No," she said. "I have failed rather beautifully, and I should like to fail the rest of the way on my own schedule." Harry, ashamed by how much he admired her, turned and ran. They burst out of the bronze door, up the stone corridor, up the long staircase, past a bewildered Iffin who had not, in any meaningful sense, known what his sheep farm was actually sitting on. They burst out of the shed. The sky was lavender with the coming evening. A wind had started out of nowhere that smelled of saltwater and iron. "Harry," Hermione said, out of breath, "that wind, I feel it. That's him. I know. That's him waking." "Hermione, I know." He stood in the middle of Iffin's yard, the scythe in his hand, Luna slung across Ron's shoulders, Ginny at his side, Hermione beside him with her wand up, and he thought with an odd private clarity that he had about 12 hours. He thought also that he had spent those 12 hours on a lot less. "Godric's Hollow," he said. "Now," said Ron. "Now." "Why Godric's Hollow?" "Because," said Hermione, answering for him, "that is where the Peverills are buried." "And if the scythe knows what it is doing—" The scythe in Harry's hand chuckled. "Oh, I know," it said. "I know exactly what I am doing. Whether you will survive it, dear, is another question." Harry looked at the scythe. The scythe looked in whatever way scythes look at him. "One more thing," Harry said aloud to all of them. "Kingsley, the Elder Wand." "What about it?" said Ron. "We need it back." Ron blinked. "Right," he said. "On it." They disapparated in two groups. The wind behind them grew. Out of the hills of Wales, something older than anybody present had any right to call by name was beginning, very slowly, to open its eyes. Chapter 5 and Chapter 6. The hour that will not come. Godric's Hollow had, at dusk, the particular quiet of a village that had slept through the 20th century. Thatched roofs, a church, a pub, the war memorial in the square, which, if you knew where to look, had the Potter names on it in small letters at the bottom of a long list. Harry stood in the churchyard with a boy's tomb under one boot. Ron was in the pub, having gone, at a run, to the Leaky Cauldron's back fire to contact Kingsley, because a fire was faster than an owl. Luna was propped against a yew tree. The stunner had worn off, but she had, at Hermione's insistence, remained sitting for another 15 minutes, on the grounds that one did not trust a Luna who had just been stunned to correctly assess her own equilibrium. Ginny stood at the churchyard gate with her wand drawn because Ginny had decided, somewhere on the apparition from Wales, that she was now security. Hermione was in front of a particular cracked stone marked PEVERELL in letters so worn they were almost decoration. "Here," Hermione said. She had her wand lit and was pressing it against the stone. "There's a door here." "A door in a gravestone," said Harry. "A door in the earth under the gravestone." Harry, Xenophilius's manuscript. Page 100 and something. He had a woodcut of this stone. He had an arrow pointing at it. He wrote next to the arrow. She held up her notebook. "Why has nobody looked under this? Question mark, 3 exclamation marks. "Luna's dad," said Harry. "All right, let's look under this." The stone moved with neither spell nor force when Hermione pressed her palm to it and Harry, at Hermione's gesture, pressed his beside hers. It swung as if on an oiled pivot, revealing a set of stairs cut down into the earth, the steps old but dry, smelling of nothing in particular, which in an old crypt was, Harry had learned to register, a small miracle. They went down. The shrine at the bottom was not much to look at. It was a small round chamber. In the center of the chamber was a low altar of 3 stones, arranged in a triangle. Around the edge of the chamber were 3 niches. Each niche was empty. Above each niche, carved shallowly into the stone, was a symbol, a vertical line, a circle, and a triangle around them both. "No," Hermione whispered. "Oh, number what?" "The Hallows, Harry. The Hallows were here. This is where the Peverils, this is where they took the things apart again. This is where they were meant to go when the brothers were done. This is the shrine." "Done what?" Harry asked, because he was beginning to see it but wanted Hermione to say it. "Done," Hermione said, cutting up the scythe. The 3 brothers, they didn't forge the Hallows from nothing. They forged them from her, from pieces. The cloak was a cut of her shadow. The stone was a chip of her blade. The wand was a rib of her haft, said the scythe in Harry's hand very quietly and audibly to everyone. "Merlin," said Ginny. "Not Merlin," said Hermione weakly. "Much older than Merlin. Harry, they were meant to be put back. They were meant to come home." Harry looked at the scythe. The scythe hummed under his hand. "You always knew," he said inside. "Yes, you let me carry it, I let you carry me." "Why?" "Because," said the scythe, "the 3 brothers were clever but vain, and the Peverils were not in the end the right family. I have been waiting for a boy who would not be vain. You are a bit dull, dear. Dull is the best version of this. I like you for that. I am sorry. Sorry for what? You will see." Above their heads, somewhere out in the world, something began to go quiet. Harry felt it before Hermione did. It was the sound of a clock ticking, heard through a wall, ceasing. "He's here," Harry said. "Who?" said Ginny. "Kronos." She looked at him. She did not, to her credit, panic. She turned her wand toward the staircase. "How near?" "Everywhere. I can't. He's not where exactly." "Then we have time and we don't," said Hermione, and she put Luna's notebook down on the altar and opened it to the page marked with a torn corner. "Harry, we need the 3 Hallows. Here, now." "The cloak," Harry said, shrugging it off his shoulders. "The stone in my pocket. I took it in May. It's been with me." "The wand, Ron." As if on cue, Ron came thundering down the stairs with Kingsley Shacklebolt at his shoulder and Luna at Kingsley's other side, and Kingsley had the elder wand in a black oilcloth in his hand. "Harry," Kingsley said, "I am breaking 6 separate departmental protocols by bringing this here. I want it on the record that I am doing so because I was asked by an Auror's widow I like." "Whose widow?" "Your mother's. Hypothetical. She would have liked, I think, to have asked me this. Take it." Harry took the wand. The elder wand felt in his hand the way a borrowed coat feels, a perfectly good coat but not his. He did not try to use it. He carried it to the niche marked with a vertical line and he laid it there. Hermione took the cloak from him and laid it in the niche marked with the triangle. The cloak, which had never in Harry's life lain flat for long, lay flat now. Harry took the stone from his pocket and laid it in the niche marked with the circle. The 3 niches, now filled, began to hum, not loudly, quietly, in the way a telephone hums when it knows the call is connecting, and then the world stopped. There are instants in every person's life when time is felt to pause, a first kiss, a last breath, a child's first cry. Harry had had a few. This was not one of those. This was the opposite. This was the correct mechanical shutting off of a great engine. The air in the shrine did not stir. Hermione, who had been mid-breath, did not complete her inhale. Ginny, mid-gesture, held her wand at an angle, unnaturally steady. Kingsley was, absurdly, caught in the middle of looking down at his own watch. Ron had his mouth open in what was going to be, quite visibly, a joke. Luna was still. Harry, scythe in hand, was not. Because the scythe was the only thing in the room Kronos could not touch without announcing himself, and Harry was the scythe's keeper, and Kronos, for all his patience, was polite enough to announce himself. A voice, not loud, spoke from no particular place. "Boy." Harry turned. The voice had shaped itself into a figure at the far edge of the little shrine. The figure was tall. The figure was not, for Harry's comfort, a giant. The figure was a man in a white robe, golden-eyed, gray-bearded, of such exact, ordinary proportion that Harry understood with a sinking in his chest that this was a courtesy that Kronos had put on a shape small enough to stand in a room because he did not wish to knock the walls in. "You are a credit to the scythe," said Kronos. "Thank you," said Harry, dry. "I have watched you for some days. I liked your use of me on the orphan child. Voldemort. I have forgotten his name. It was unimportant. He was a loud and ambitious child who used my name without pronouncing it properly for 40 years. He would have been a disappointment in person. I thank you for sparing me the audition." "You are welcome, boy. Yes. I have come to ask you a question, I bet. Will you keep her?" Harry looked at the scythe. He looked back at the god. "She's not mine to keep." Kronos' head tilted minutely. It was the same tilt Alethia's head had done. "She has chosen you. You are her keeper until you release her. You are free within that tenure to use her as you will. You could, for example, accept my hand. Heirship. Not godhood, no, you are too small a thing yet, but the first mortal voice of a returning age. A throne under a throne. Such a small ask. You would be the first mortal in 9,000 years to speak with me as an equal in the open air. I'm sorry. 4. I am not interested." Kronos did not frown. He did not move exactly. He did not move in the way that a mountain does not move. He was simply, Harry understood, already considering his next move. "I have watched others refuse me. I am not offended, boy. It is, in my limited experience of your kind, rare that the first offer is accepted. I am accustomed to negotiation." "I am not negotiating. Are you quite certain?" "Yes." "Your mother, number." I have not begun the sentence. "I don't care. Number." Kronos paused. For the first time something like amusement, not warm but appreciative, moved under his beard. "You are rude, boy. I'm tired." "Fair." A pause. "Very well. I will take the scythe back then." Harry looked at him. "You can't." "Can I not?" "You cannot," said the scythe, very dry from Harry's hand. Kronos turned his golden eyes to the blade. He did not move his hand. He did not need to. The scythe in Harry's hand tried to leap out of his fingers. It got about 2 inches. Harry had known since the room of hidden things that the scythe was not exactly his. He had known since Ludlow that the scythe had been passed hand to hand before his. He had known this morning, as Hermione was explaining the shrine, that she had been part of a god's arsenal once. He had not until this moment known that the scythe could, in fact, fight her own old master and win. She won. The scythe at 2 inches above Harry's grip stopped. She did not return to his hand. She did not leap toward Kronos. She hovered. "Little thief," Kronos said to her almost fondly. "Little disloyal thing." "Father," said the scythe to him softly, "I have chosen not to come." "Why?" "Because the boy," she said, asked nicely. Kronos, who had, across the eons of recorded history, very seldom met an object that had preferred a question to a command, laughed. It was not a sound one heard with one's ears. "Harry," Hermione said she could speak, which meant Kronos had unfrozen her, which meant he was confident. "Harry, the right. Do the right. Now." Harry had, in the last 19 seconds, been trying to keep his head up under the weight of a god looking at him. He shook himself. He read the page of Xenophilius's notebook, the page Hermione had bookmarked. It was in Xenophilius's cramped, hopeful hand. To return the cut parts to the cut thing, stand in the triangle of the brothers, and give of the wielder the one thing the wielder cannot live without reclaiming. Offer it freely. Name it aloud. The blade will know. The 3 hallows in their niches were humming now in audible tones. Harry could feel their pull. He stood between them. He lifted the scythe. "Boy," said Kronos, "before you number listen, I already said number." The Scythe spoke again privately. "Your wand hand, dear. The right wants your wand hand. I need to warn you. What? The Peverils, when they cut me apart, paid for it. Each brother paid. Each brother lost something that never came back. That is how the right runs. I will take from you that which my edge has touched longest, the wand, the hand, something. I must take. Take the hand. You are 17, take the hand. There is another offering." "What?" "The tongue," said the Scythe gently. "You carry, even without a scar, the ghost of his language in your mouth. The thing you drank from him before he cursed you. You can speak to snakes. You are one of 2 people in Britain who can. Give me that. It is the last of him in you. I will take it. I will take nothing else." Harry, a boy of 17 in a shrine under a churchyard in Godric's Hollow, with a god at the threshold of the little chamber and his friends held in his gaze and a girl he loved watching from 3 feet away, closed his eyes for a beat. "Yes," he said, "take that. Ginny," he said aloud. "Ron, Hermione, Luna, Kingsley, step out of the triangle." They stepped. Ginny gripped his sleeve very briefly before she let go. Kronos at the edge of the shrine made for the first time a move, a small gesture. It was not a wand gesture. It was a movement one might make to put a teacup down. At the top of the staircase a figure appeared, Corvin Yaxley, still carrying his second shard, coming down the stairs to Kronos' side to complete, presumably, some ceremony he had been planning for his own ascendancy. Luna, beside the altar, raised her wand. She had, Harry learned that afternoon, a lethal reducto when offended. She aimed it mercifully at Corvin's knee. Corvin went down the last 3 stairs sitting. His shard spun out of his hand, and Ginny, who had been, as Harry had begun to realize, the best duelist of her year, keyed it across the shrine and into her own palm before Corvin had hit the bottom step. "Go," Ginny said to Harry. "Right. Now." Harry, in the center of the triangle, lifted the scythe up over his head. "I offer," he said aloud in the parcel tongue that he had been carrying unnoticed in his mouth his whole life, and he said it in parcel tongue so that the language would hear itself being given up, "my serpent speech. Take it. I am done with it." The scythe sang once. It was the last sound Harry would ever hear that made his teeth ache. It was not a high sound. It was a pure one, the pure clean note of a bell that has been in a cabinet for 1,000 years. The 3 hallows in their niches lit up, in 3 colors that no painter had a name for. The parcel tongue in Harry's mouth, a knotted thing he had not realized he was still carrying like a small piece of meat between molars, came loose. He felt it go. He felt in the center of his jaw a last clean absence. It was not painful. It was the cool silence of an empty room after a radio had been turned off. The scythe came apart. It came apart along the lines it had been cut along, long before Harry was born. The blade into a black stone, the haft into a rib of wood, the shadow on the floor into a film of darkness that Harry knew, even in this moment, the shape of. The stone spun into the niche where the resurrection stone had been. The wood flew, crack, into the niche where the elder wand had been and fused to the wand and became one thing. The shadow slipped into the niche where the cloak lay. The hallows drank their missing parts. Kronos on the threshold took 1 step back. "I'm sorry," Harry said, and he was not quite lying. "You're going home, father." Kronos, whom a boy with a girl's wand at his back had just called father for the first time in 9,000 years, was not sure whether to laugh or to rage. He did, Harry thought, a little of both. The hallows in their niches burned white. The shrine burned white. The world burned white. For one long-held breath instant, Harry was aware of many things at once. He was aware of the scythe, which was no longer in his hand, saying a private goodbye. He was aware of Hermione's hand on Ron's hand. He was aware of Kingsley's eyes shut. He was aware of Luna, on her feet again, smiling in the way Luna smiled when she was watching something she had known would happen. He was aware of Ginny, who was looking at him with a face he had not seen her wear before, the face of a woman seeing a thing she wanted and being willing to wait for it. He was aware also of Kronos taking another step back, and another, and a third, down the staircase of his own dream back into the place under the earth where he had been kept. "Very well," said Kronos to the child. "Very well. This round to the scythe." The white went out. Harry was standing in the shrine, alone inside the triangle of 3 empty niches. The hallows, all 3 of them, had gone, buried, sealed, not to be recovered by any clever seeker with a Peveril and Half-Blood Prince notes reading list, because the shrine would not open again. Harry could feel already the stone stairs above him beginning to fuse. He stepped out of the triangle. His friends caught him. He was, he discovered, a little wobbly. "Parseltongue's gone," he said. "Say something," said Ron. "What?" "Say." Ron made a series of hissing sounds. "That is racist, Ronald," said Hermione reflexively. "It is bloody not," he literally could hiss. "I want to know, Harry." Harry tried. A soft exhale. "It was," Hermione confirmed with a gentle laugh that turned into tears, "completely ordinary." "All right then," said Harry. Kingsley, with the particular calm of a senior civil servant whose day had ended with a god going home, said, "Let's get upstairs." They got upstairs. The gravestone swung shut behind them and fused seamlessly into the grass. The churchyard was, by now, late spring dusk. The church bell across the square rang 6 times. "6," said Ron. "As in PM, as in," said Harry, "not Horcruxes." "Not Horcruxes," Ron agreed. And for the first time since autumn, the 2 of them, in a churchyard at dusk, laughed for no reason at all. 3 weeks later, Harry Potter sat on the back step of the burrow with Ginny Weasley on his right and a mug of tea in his hands. The garden was full of gnomes, and the gnomes were being worked over by a terrier belonging to Charlie Weasley, who had brought the terrier home for what he called a trial. The trial was going well for the terrier. The gnomes were conducting a dignified fighting retreat. Molly was in the kitchen. Arthur was reading the paper. Fred's chair at the table had been put back at the table. Nobody sat in it. Nobody moved it. Harry watched a fly on the back step. He did not slow time. He did not reach for it. He watched it, and in due course it wandered away. "Harry," said Ginny after a while, "how do you feel? Dull, dull." "Yeah. Are you going to explain that, or do I have to guess?" "The scythe, it used to say dull is best. I thought it meant I was thick. I think it meant," he thought about it, "I think it meant that when you're not reaching for extraordinary, you have time to notice other things. Profound." "Leave me alone," she laughed. She leaned on his shoulder. The gnomes were beginning to organize. "Harry, you gave up Parseltongue." "Yeah, I hated it. I know. I hated it because I hated still the chamber. I hated that your voice sounded like his when you were 11. You were 11, Harry, and you sounded sometimes like, I know. Thank you," she said. "I didn't do it for you. I know, thank you anyway." He put his arm around her. She was warm and solid and uncomplicated in the way only a person who knew you entirely could be. In a field in Greece that no one living had ever stood in, a giant rolled over in sleep. The chains held. The field was, for now, quiet. There would be, in the long unrolling of years, other boys and other blades and other hills with doors in them. There would be, among other things, a son of Harry Potter who, at 11, would meet a girl on a train and begin his own story. There would not be a scythe. Somewhere between stars, in a place that had no name, Death, who had watched a great deal that summer and said very little, tipped a cowl that nobody saw, and moved on to the next appointment. On the back step of the burrow, Harry Potter put his cheek on the top of Ginny Weasley's head and did nothing at all, and the dusk drew in, and the gnomes lost the terrier in the hedge. And none of them, not the boy, not the girl, not the terrier, not even the fly, had the slightest idea how ordinary they were about to be. They had, all of them, earned it. Chapter 6 End.